What's up, Bills fans? I know it's been a long time since I've done a Bills video, but the season's right around the corner. The 10th season's ready to kick off. I know you're excited. I'm excited. Um, don't have too many expectations going into the season, save one that we see a more consistent performance day in and day out, and not just by, well, game in and game out, but just not by the, the, the team, but the whole organization, the coaching staff, the players, the front office, everybody. Uh, you never knew who was what in the last regime. I mean, there was three different offensive coordinators. There was all these different gimmicky things that they were doing. Just allegiance to players that just really were never winners, and guys that were just more window dressing. I mean, be honest, T.O. was window dressing last year. I know we all bought it. I bought it, but it ended up to be a window dressing move. Um, Everything that was done this offseason reflected how different the two regimes are, and the way they handle players, the way they ran a training camp, the way they acquired players, everything. Um, like just every situation you could think of. Uh, let's start at quarterback. Jerron would have found a way to get rid of either. It would have Braun probably would have never been on the roster. I mean, most likely Edwards would have been gone. Fitzpatrick still be there. Hamden would still be there. And who would he bring in? Somebody who played for him in Detroit, maybe. um, just symbolic of what he did. Anthony Thomas played for him in Chicago, and it took like an injury for him to put Fred Jackson on the field and see the talents that he had, and we see what he's become now. Just things like that. Just not being able to identify that stuff right away. It took injuries and just drastic things for these guys to spot talent. You look at the biggest talents that they had were guys that they didn't draft. Jason Peters gone, Jim Leonard starting for two top five, number one, whatever, between top whatever top anywhere a top type five defense, and he couldn't start in Buffalo. Uh, Same thing. I mean, George Wilson, he's become a very good safety, a decent safety, just as good as Whitner. I've seen him make more plays than Whitner. I've seen Leonard make more plays than Whitner. Uh, so, I mean, what does that tell you? Fred Jackson, a guy who wasn't drafted, but proven that he's better than the 12th overall pick that they've taken with Marshawn Lynch. It's just, it's unbelievable. David Nelson, undrafted wide receiver, comes in and just basically takes the job away from James Hardy. And James Hardy would have made that roster if Jerron was still would have been here. He would have said, "Oh, we invested a second-round pick in this guy." I could just hear it now. Second-round pick. He's got the size. He's shown he can do it. This and that. You would have heard all this wishy-washy crap, and the brutal hard fact was you heard it time in and time out. The guy just could not create separation. He was a sloppy route runner, and I don't care how tall you are. If you can't do those two things, you can't be a good wide receiver in the league, period. The Aaron Schobel situation is another example. That man would have not had to shed an ounce of sweat, would have not had to pop one pad. He would have walked on the field week one starter, left defensive end. Would have sets a huge, just a horrible precedence in the locker room full of players who are working hard, trying to make the team. And here he comes. Let's put him back in, because you remember, according to him, Buffalo could. It was he all but said they all but said that the team was incapable of rushing the passer without him. Was incapable. The new Knicks, Gailey, they're like, well, we want him to be here. He knows when he has to be here. We want him to be here, so we're going to let him make his decision. First day of camp came, he didn't show up, so they're like, well, we're going to release him, because we got guys that have come to OTAs and mini camps and trying to do the right thing, trying to get us better. He's missed all these reps. He's going to switch a position. He's not the youngest guy. Time to move on. Time to move on. A guy like Josh Reed. Josh Reed they would have done everything in the world to resign him. And you look at a guy like him, he doesn't even get signed till late because of San Diego's problem at wide receiver, mostly with Vincent Jackson. Gets released. Here comes Patrick Creighton. Here was a guy in Buffalo that the way they talked him up was invaluable. You know, the last regime and even the regime before that, they did a marvelous job of overvaluing and overhyping their players, just markedly so, markedly. I mean, Joseph Goebbels would have been his jaw would have dropped with the propaganda they put out about their players. Ryan Denny, I mean, this guy was a stalwart backup on the defensive line. He hasn't been signed. He was a 4-3 defensive end. No other team's taking a look at him. I haven't even heard him getting a workout. Nothing. Everybody's down to their 53 man. He's nowhere to be found. Linebackers like last year's backup linebackers of Palmer, Nick Harris, Cordo, Marcus Buggs. I mean, come on. Come on. It's just unbelievable. I mean, two guys that were starters last year are backups on this defense. Mitchell and Ellison. So it just goes to show how different they are. The offensive line situation, even the same thing. No more Kirk Chambers, thank God. Ed Wang didn't take a snap in preseason for this staff to know this guy's better than Chambers, and he can definitely help us. A young guard that lost the numbers game in Pittsburgh, Urbic, they get him. No Seth McKinney, Jonathan Scott. A guy who, a perfect example of what the crap that they sold to us was Langston Walker was a better pass protector than Peters. They sold that shit. Billy Goods to us, he can play left tackle. He proved it. He played in game 1. He filled in there another game. We're fine. A week before, they cut him. We're better off without him. They threw Demetrius Bell to the Wolves last year, and I know the fans gave him hell. He never played an NFL snap, wasn't getting reps with the first team, and they just throw him in there. Same thing with, Schoner. Maybe he wasn't the best offensive coordinator, but to cut him week before the season didn't help. And you just see this night and day with this new staff and the new front office, the way they wanted to get bigger, more physical. You see linebackers now on the roster, 240, 245. Excited to see a guy like, Antonio Coleman, maybe if they're winning a game late, get a chance to rush the passer. Or, Maben, who, just looks symbolic of the drawn picks. It's just apparently a guy who can't win a starting linebacker spot, a spot that he's more suited for, seemingly with his build, over a guy like, Chris Ellis, who seemed lost, who seemed sure to be cut, but he played his way on the roster. Got to give him credit. Dwayne Edwards, Carrington, Troop, big, bulky, physical defensive linemen, as opposed to the Copeland Bryans of the world, things like that. Just so, and then just the list goes on and on. The Justin Jenkins, that they would have never gone out and tried to look for a guy like David Martin, who's a proven catching tight end in the league. They would have Derek Fine would have still been on the roster. But anyway, Bills fans, I don't know why I think they're going to pick up a veteran wide receiver. I think so, but maybe they're sold on Donald Jones. I don't know. David Nelson definitely looks good. Disappointing about Shane Nelson. I would really like to see him play, maybe even inside, slot wide receiver, but we'll see. Anyway, have a good week, and hopefully we'll squash the fish this week.